It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting through my website, emailrevealer.com. Or you could just email me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. If you like our show, be sure and check out our Patreon, Opperman Report Patreon. All the shows ad-free. Everything you hear Monday to Friday, AM/FM radio. All the commercials cut out. If you miss a show, they're up there. Plus old classic shows we put up there, documents, all kinds of stuff we put up there for free as well. Opperman Report on Patreon. The archives are free at Spreaker.com. There's like 4,000 hours of shows on Spreaker. You can go there. There's a chat room. You get an email notification when I put up new stuff. I play repeats every night. Doing a big tribute to our friend Daniel Hopsicker, who passed away this week, and we've been doing a whole days-long shows, about 15 hours of programming with the great Daniel Hopsicker in his memory. And I tell you, I'm very excited about today's show. We just had a really long pre-interview here. We're talking with our guest, Michael Horn, and he runs the website theyflyblog.com, and he's an expert. This guy's been around forever about the Billy Meier story. Now, you might remember those old documentaries about Billy Meier, where he had those photographs in Switzerland of the disc-shaped UFOs next to trees and stuff, black and white photos back in the old days. And there's a whole bunch of documentaries about this Billy Meier story. You can find over the years, the Meier contacts, the key to our future survival, the silent revolution of truth as time fulfills. And there's a couple of books, too, that we want to direct you to. The Might of the Thought, and also from the Pit of Outer Space? Yes. Mr. Michael Horn, are you there?
I am here. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you so much. Hey, before we get into Billy Meier and all this stuff, tell us about yourself first. Who is Michael Horn?
Oh, good golly. Well, I'm somebody who came from a background that only partially would hint at my interest and the pursuit of this material. Growing up in the 40s and 50s and 60s, early space shows on radio and TV. I wasn't a sci-fi fan into the 70s and all that stuff. I only discovered Star Trek and reruns in the last 15 or 20 years, but I would have dreams constantly of disc-like lights in the sky that would travel around in groups in the night sky. I kind of remembered having a conversation with somebody seemingly in a craft and standing underneath a disc-shaped craft that rotated, and there were these kind of memories. And then as I grew up, I still had this interest in what were known at the time as flying saucers primarily. In 1979, I walked into a bookstore in Los Angeles called the Bodhi Tree. I saw the first Billy Meier UFO photo book, had to have it. That began my fascination, study, research, and pursuit of this information. I got transcripts of his earliest conversations that he had in the 1970s, 1975 to 78. I got those in 1986, and from there, I started to research, and I discovered that early on that this material, with the clearest, most stunningly clear, still irreproducible hundreds of pre-digital UFO photos, videos, films. This was not even just only about UFOs and extraterrestrials. It was quite literally about our very threatened future survival. And I started to document news stories and discovery scientific information that was corroborating this man, his information, Billy Meier in Switzerland, that actually dated back to the 1940s. So that's me in that sense. And all during this interim, I did many things. I'm like one of the first inventors of ebooks. In 1972, I came up with a prototype for an inflatable portable travel collar. I created the fashion-fatted fingernail art in the 60s. And, I was a prize-winning painter and songwriter and all this stuff. But the interest in this material, dominated my life and has pulled me forward. While I've still, have creative pursuits, this is, to me, the most important true story in all of human history and science. There's nothing that compares to it, including my own, personal pursuits and talents and what have you.
Yeah, I can testify personally. You're very passionate about this topic, off the air as well as on the air. So it's not like an act. Okay, this is for real. I've enjoyed our time together so far. Now, who is Billy Meier then?
Sure. Billy Meier is a now 86-year-old Swiss man. He lives in a rugged rural part of Switzerland, kind of slightly southeast of Zurich. He has one arm. He lost most of his left arm, or I should say at least half of it, in a bad bus accident in Turkey in about 1964. I think it was, or 65 perhaps, more accurately. He is a man who's lived a life that I sometimes try to encapsulate as a combination of Lawrence of Arabia, Luke Skywalker, and there's another one in there as well. I've got to think who it is. Lawrence of Arabia, Luke Skywalker, and one other fantastic. Indiana Jones.
I was going to say Indiana Jones. I was going to guess that.
Yeah, truly. I mean, this is the man whose life is literally all of those things, and it's far more remarkable than any of our sci-fi. And that's why people don't know about it for the most part in the world, despite the fact that his contacts have been going on for 81 years since he was a boy. And
wasn't there something, too, he was like a bodyguard for the Shah of Iran, something along those lines?
Among the many things he did, he was known as the Phantom in the Middle East in the late 1950s. He worked for police departments from Pakistan, or was it India, South Pakistan, perhaps Turkey. He would bring in serial killers and mass murderers alive. He never killed anybody. He had been, when he was much younger, he'd run away from bad circumstances in Switzerland, joined the Foreign Legion for a time. He was in it maybe for a year, realized he didn't want to become a hardened killer, but he had learned many skills that enabled him to handle weapons and handguns and how to defend himself. And he put those services, those aspects, along with his unbelievable iron nerves. I mean, I don't know how this man is. There have been 25 attempts in his life. The most recent one was in the past 6 months. And the circumstances that were told to me by somebody who knew what happened. I mean, this is a guy at 86 who literally stares down people shooting at him. And it's a rather remarkable thing. The man has lived the highest of highs and the most brutal treatment, mainly from other human beings and all. And he knew, among other people, King Hussein of Jordan. Yeah, he found that man, he thought it was a remarkably deep and good human being. He also knew Saddam Hussein. He knew oh my gosh, so many people. Gandhi. He knew Indira Gandhi as well as Mahatma Gandhi. He knew Rajiv Gandhi. He knew Haile Selassie. There's a whole laundry list of people that he was introduced to. But again, supposedly, here, just people have to look and read the information for themselves. He was introduced to them ostensibly by his first alleged extraterrestrial human teacher, who took him to meet many people when he was as young as 8 and 10 years of age, because he was being tutored by this man. And he would be tutored by 2 more specific extraterrestrial people. They would be females, and this was the male. And then, of course, in the ensuing years, as the information represents it, he's met many, many people from a number of races, extraterrestrial races, and people representing a wide variety of skin colors, and that we would, recognize as representative of races, racial characteristics, skin colors of people on Earth, and the background material on the ubiquitous nature of human life in the greater universe, not in our solar system, but in the greater universe, fills in a lot of this information too. The scientific information in this case is unparalleled, and I have literally stopped scientists in their tracks by presenting it to them with the proof that it was published up to decades before any scientist from NASA or any place ever supposedly discovered it. This is far more about miraculous universal knowledge than it is about UFOs and extraterrestrials.
Well, let me ask you a couple of questions. And what about Yuri? You mentioned he met all these people. What about Yuri Geller?
Yuri Geller is not spoken of that highly in the material. He's without disparaging him. I think they refer to him as somebody with some mild gifts, but some also bits of human ingenuity,
intelligence background. There's a lot of the CIA and
well,
and Mossad.
Now he's not the most informed person about most things, but he's a guy who's come on the stage and done his thing, and he's Yuri Geller, but he's not a contactee with extraterrestrial human beings.
Now, I was surprised to hear you said that Billy Meier is 86 years old, so he's still alive?
Yes.
Oh, I'm shocked.
Yeah, I just saw him a couple months ago.
And how's his health?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
How is his health at 86?
Oh, well, I have to say this. Billy has encountered, experienced, and displayed the widest variety of health conditions, afflictions, things that you would not think are survivable, let alone, kind of surmountable. So whenever I see him, he seems to be in that upstage, but he has been through just hellish things, quite literally, that I don't know. I'll give you a quick anecdote on one of them that was about 4 years ago. I'd learned and seen photographs that Billy had been in a bad fall. He'd shattered most of his shoulder on his only usable arm side, and they could not operate on him because prior to that, he had to have a heart valve replacement. And they said, listen, we can't put you under, it would kill you. And so here's a strap to keep your arm strapped to your body, and maybe the tissue will heal sufficiently, in time, but, we can't repair all that broken stuff. And so we went over there in May of 2019, and after seeing this photograph, his arm strapped to his body, smiling and grinning away. And I'm in the kitchen there, and he walks in, goes over, no strap on his body, reaches over, makes himself a cup of coffee with his one hand, and standing and drinking. I said, Billy, your arm, your shoulder. So he puts I didn't put the coffee cup down. He held it, and he moved his arm around with it. He said, yes, see, it works again. Everything is fine. And he's doing circles. And I said to him, this is why it's interesting. We talked about this book or mentioned it. I said, so Billy, is that because I knew they couldn't operate. I said, the might of the thoughts? And he says, yes, precisely. And I said, so in order to do this using your own mind and, how we have these innate powers, it's not magic, do you have to know every tendon and nerve connection? And he said, no. I said, well, what do you do? He says, you continue to focus on the improvement. Now, that's a nice little synopsis. There might be more to what that really entails if you're dealing with something like a shattered shoulder. But I thought, well, I think that's generally a good thing to focus on anyhow with our health, instead of, being hypochondriacs or just giving in to something that could be a rough, condition, an illness. We have to then move ourselves towards the right frame of mind. We don't deny that we're afflicted, but we focus on the improvement. Well, he's done it over and over. He had a brain injury in the 80s, whereby part of his brain, this was all determined through x-rays, was damaged where that part of the brain would not function. He moved the function of that part of his brain, to another part. So it's not about, I don't want to do a big, he's not a cult guru. Right. He's not a savior. He's just a man that is quite remarkable and teaches people how to progress in this human evolution wherever we are at, and also warns us of the things that are coming because there's an immutable law known as cause and effect that humankind has been violating for thousands of years for various reasons. And now we are going to be, and we're seeing it already, we will continue now from here on to reap the challenges of our faulty thinking, our faulty understanding of what life is. And so there's many things to Billy Meier and what he's about.
Okay, so he's 86 years old. He's still alive. Is he still in contact with these other worlds?
Weekly, face-to-face voluntary meetings with these people.
Okay.
Yes.
And now it's 2023. We have iPhones, but why can't we videotape this and see it?
Well, here's the answer on it. And this is weird because look at his contact, let's say his official contacts started in 1975 when he began to take, conversations and transcribe them. He's taken photographs since 1964. At any point in time, obviously, Ed, you're right. Any point in time, these people could have proved to everybody in the world their existence in a little more than 5 minutes, and in the process, driven billions of people crazy, caused panic, military attacks, suicides. They understand us, unfortunately, all too well in some ways, and not very well in others, I have to say it, because I'm free to say whatever I want. I'm not obligated. I represent the Meier material with an agreement with Billy. I'm free to disagree and to say, look, I don't know. I can only tell you what I know or can prove. So in this case, what they have said all along, we cannot come down and impose ourselves on the people who cannot handle the existence of other beings, who will either be so terrified or want to worship us as they worshipped our forefathers and others as gods and set in motion things that still afflict us. We will not do that. We will always allow the out, let the skeptics have their day whenever we present the evidence. Look, his physical evidence has been independently, expertly authenticated by U.S. astronauts, NASA, JPL, USGS, IBM, McDonnell Douglas, scientific experts with no axe to grind. And I am among the people, I first of all, I discovered some photos of his never before seen, historically unprecedented, with one of the UFOs, in his case, interacting in 1981 with a U.S. top secret stealth plane, no attack. And when I let the government, there was a government committee set up a couple of years ago to investigate UFOs, one preceding the current one, another dog and pony show, and I gave them this information that I had. They called me back. They said, will you send the photos? I said, yes, I'll send you copies. Good, we'll move them up the chain. I sent the copies to a national security advisor for Representative Andre Carson's committee, and that was the last I heard from them because they censored them. They censored them simply because they show that there's no threat from these people, from UFOs. Gotcha, yeah. Okay.
Because they want to build up the defense budget.
That's exactly
right. That makes sense.
There it is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's the agenda, and the agenda for the defense budget is to push further into a dead, and I mean dead, end war for us with Russia, China, and all other associated parties that are gathering against us, as specifically forewarned as far back at least as 1976 in copyrighted books. All this stuff is proved, and thereby the things that keep unfolding, the hundreds of specific, prophetically accurate, scientific, geopolitical, and the rest prophecies that we've proved. This proves time travel. Mr. Meier, just for those who need an out here on this, is not just 86 years old. And yes, he is by virtue of his birthday, but Mr. Meier and his friends are literally scientific and legal standard approved time travelers. And they're trying to do what they can within that which they are allowed by the laws of this universe to do, to try to help us the people of Earth survive our bad choices. I guess I've never put it that way, but it is.
Now, and when you said there's been all these attempts on his life, who is it that's trying to kill him? The oil industry?
Well,
there
are intelligence parties that have tried over the years to kill him. There are people who are very religious who thought he must be the imaginary, devil and Satan and all this stuff. And of course, skeptics always say, well, if they really want to kill him, they can kill. People are very generous with their suggestions about how people can and could and should be killed, rather than understanding that in the early days, not now, in the early days, Meier did have some protection from the extraterrestrials, who also told him that he would have to develop his own abilities to avoid being killed, because they couldn't sit around and do it forever. And I've spoken to at least 14 eyewitnesses to attempts in his life. I know 2 people who were with him, sitting with him during the last attempt. I think it's 6 months ago, somewhere right in there. It's not, it's no joke. People try to kill a human being. Why? Because he brings to them that which they cannot handle, because the conditioning of human life on Earth for millennia has been through religion and politics to control people, not to give us the liberation to seek the wonders of life in the universe and question and come to our own conclusions and take responsibility for our own lives. And that's a cornerstone. That kind of whole thing is a cornerstone of this material.
And Mr. Horn, you don't always have to kill somebody. Like what are his living conditions? Like, are there people? Because people can be inserted into your life to make your life miserable. Yes. All kinds of things can happen. I think. Right. So, like, what are his living? What are his living conditions? Does he have people around him? Family? Is he married? What's going on?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I can, because you've touched on a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah. When you said you don't have to kill a person to ruin their life, you can try to assassinate their character. That has been an ongoing pursuit conducted by intelligence services, and with great amount of help through what's called the UFO community, ufology, which is composed of the biggest collection of unscientific wannabes and self-seeking profiteers who don't know anything of significance, and thereby are fed a lot of stuff through intelligence agencies to promote for the sake of disinformation and distraction. People have been inserted whenever possible into groups around him, or in some way, shape, or other, or people who've come into a group, because he has a study group. They have a study group that is a nonprofit Swiss, and that should tell you something. Swiss nonprofit group means very strict laws for publishing his information in documents and books, so that the people that are around him, they all work. It's a voluntary effort. And I've seen the books 15 different times and visits and all. It's what they say it is. He doesn't live the life of luxury, but I'll tell you this. They live on one of the most beautiful environments you can imagine. And when you see the photographs of what it was that Billy Meier took over as a property with the help of people who supported and financed getting this property for a center in the 1970s, it was just a barren, rundown farmhouse on very barren land, strangely barren. Yes, some foresting around, but since that time, Billy, in the first couple of years himself, literally single-handedly renovated, put in water and electricity, put in pavement and stuff. One hand, this guy, while he then at night was working as a night watchman. I mean, people say, oh, he's got a cult in Switzerland, he's got Rolls Royce. No, this guy, they live in the part of the center is where he and his family live. Some other people, a few, live on the property. There is just a fantastic richness of trees and plants and birds. And they have a garden. They grow some stuff. They used to have larger gardens, but they shut that down when the mad cow disease, became prevalent. And they have a work schedule there for everybody. I mean, when I've gone there, and when I was younger and able to do, more of the stuff in the forest, I just thrived on it because I was learning things that I didn't in my city life. And I was working with people from around the world who all felt this way, and many people who had the talents, knowing about plants and how you cut tree things and do all this wonderful stuff. So to me, it's been like a blessing to go over there and work a few hard days with everybody, and sit down to coffee and sit down to meals. And Billy is supervised. He knows more about nature than anybody I can think of. He knows which plants should go where, but he gets a lot of that advice and help also from the Plejaren people, those extraterrestrials they did, if I may, one more to talk it over, they told him about planting, this was some years ago, I don't know, 20 years ago, certain trees in a row, and they said, and Billy said, well, are you sure they go here? And he says, guy said to him, plant these trees here, here, and here, but we want you to plant this tree over here. And Billy said, okay. So he said to him, that tree that you just planted there is not going to grow as well because the energetic, whatever they said, ineffectively, the energetics there are not as favorable as those other 7, 8, 10 trees you plant. And over the years, they took photographs, and that's the one tree that was stunted in its growth. It grew, but not like the other trees. So they have a very sophisticated equipment to detect energies from the earth and where it's best to plant things, and we're pretty close to knowing that kind of stuff. But Billy knows tons of stuff about that and about things that are happening. He's the first person, literally, the 40s and into 1951. He's warning about unnatural man-made climate change, global warming, ozone damage, everything. And these things, he publishes them, and they're copyrighted, and that's what got me deeper into the case. The prophetically accurate information.
Quick question now. Can anyone visit this center? How often do you visit?
I try to get over there once a year. There's a kind of yearly meeting for people that want to, but it's open to the public with appointment. Generally, they set aside Sundays because I think there's even a law there about non-working in Switzerland. So the people that otherwise would be working 7 days a week instead of 6 can't legally work. And so what they do is they open it to people to come, to show them the photos, to show them the books, to show them places where the UFOs, yes, this is the place you have in the photograph, and over here, and blah, blah. And, the teaching that Billy has published is in all these books in German,
right,
and 10 English.
Now, when you go, how long do you stay there for?
It depends. I would say I'd like to stay there, if possible, 7 to 10 days, because there's only a 3-day period where the work, that's official work around there, and then on one of those days the meeting is taking place, but people will work on either side of that meeting a few days before or after, and then I've been able to stay and visit with Billy. I've interviewed him virtually every time I've gone there. I didn't interview him this time. I met with him, but I didn't interview him this time. So we try to go over there and,
Now, what about when you're there and Billy Meier is there and he's going to meet with the aliens, he's going to meet with the visitors. Does he go off by himself or do other people participate in the meetings?
What used to happen in the early days is they would let some people follow Billy because some people say, oh, you can't really be me. Well, okay, you can follow. And then there were people who witnessed the crafts coming down out of the sky. There are funny stories, like one of which was when the lead military investigator, Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens, and his team were there one night, because a lot of the meetings would take place late at night for various reasons, and Billy had to be ready, and it was raining that night, and Wendell was in the kitchen. He said Billy came walking through very quickly and went, to the door. He says, I knew that he was going on a meeting. So he says, I went over, got my coat. I walked out. I couldn't see him, and I saw there were about 7 footsteps in the mud, and then nothing beyond that. He was gone. Okay, and then when they were notified by walkie-talkie, because he would take a walkie-talkie with him to talk to them, come and pick me up. They're going to drop me off at this location or that one. And sometimes it's literally 20 kilometers away, and he's got no vehicle. He said, Wendell said that they're standing there, it's raining out, and suddenly Billy appears in front of them, walking towards them, and the rain is just beginning to spot his clothing. He was completely dry. But there's story upon story. Okay, So the people are not allowed to come and meet the extraterrestrials for actually very logical, simple reasons. People go, "Oh, I want to meet extraterrestrials," and I still get emails. And, people, "Oh, I want to meet the ETs." And I said, "Look, and I want to meet Billy because Billy doesn't meet with people anymore. I mean, for the most part, other people they're helping. They say, "Look, here's the information. If you want to meet Billy, you read his books, and you're really meeting the man." Because you're going to read about the most amazing stuff ever, in my opinion. If I'm a little too enthusiastic.
I got to tell you, Michael Horn, if I went to meet some aliens and they dropped me off 20 miles away, that would be the last time I ever meet with them. I'd give them one chance of that, okay? But now you mentioned...
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you mentioned coffee,
okay.
that you sat down and you drank coffee over there. What about like marijuana, alcohol, mushrooms, any kind of drugs?
No.
Nothing?
No. They don't do that, and they've written specifically why. It's not like moralists. They know that those substances are negative to the development of consciousness. And it's funny, because today I had to post a thing on Twitter. Some people are talking about the wonders of this drug. I said, well, it's really for people who don't have the patience or courage to do the inner work and we want phenomena. We want sensations. Look, I lived through the 60s. I did a few things, and I was recognizing, because it was short for me, because I thought, well, okay, this is interesting, but I can make myself feel this way without drugs. And it gets boring to sit around with people going, far out. Right. There's only so much you can take. So what they've said is this is why these substances are not good for your development. And they've gone into, there's a big trend now for ayahuasca, and they describe why that's really super dangerous for people. And they spell it out, not moralistically, but scientifically. And that's what I like about the material. The people that he meets with don't have beliefs, and they say, we know this, we don't know that. So they're not all knowing, but they have a pretty good, knowledge base if they are indeed the current citizens of a world, of a race of people who've been around for literally millions of years, space traveling ancestors who were Star Wars on steroids, huge high-tech warriors doing all this crazy stuff. And one quick comment about the dangers of high-tech. In 1987, Meier began warning about what we today call AI, that we will start to develop it, and then there's various things that will happen, and it will then turn against humankind with all of the supermax powers that we're enthusiastically allowing and enabling and encouraging it to develop. We are fascinated by techno-toys, but in terms of consciousness development, we're still like cave people. It's not a good mix.
We're talking to Michael Horn, runs the website called theyflyblog.com about the Billy Meier phenomenon over there in Switzerland. Now, Michael, you said yourself that you discovered all this stuff between 75 and 86 is when you started discovering these books and these things. And that was...
Actually, 79 on.
Gotcha, yeah, but you know what I mean. Yeah, but around that time.
Oh, yeah.
So now the thing is, and I remember, there was all these TV shows and documentaries, and it was kind of a big buzz about Billy Meier, Why did it all just disappear? What happened?
The concerted effort of especially the American... The CIA had a base above Meier's property. It was a then abandoned Swiss military base that they, with the cooperation of the Swiss government, took over to observe and to monitor and to try to also infiltrate Meier and his group. They took photographs of the craft themselves. That was revealed to the investigative team, but they will never admit it. What happened is they recognized, as others did, that the danger to the control element that all power entities in societies understandably want to maintain, to show that they have control and that, there's nothing uncertain about life. People like that certainty that various belief systems give them. They realized that they had no constraint whatsoever over this man, over the people that were coming and going to visit with him. And so that they weren't the only ones. There were other countries that realized this is dangerous to us. this is dangerous to some of the largest religions in the world, we will lose control, even though there was no threat ever from these people. And those photos I discovered shows it, and that's why the government won't show them to you. They're freely available on my website. But you have to understand that the agenda of our country, and this is a beautiful place, but the agenda of government and secret government and all that stuff, and Meier, believe me, has detailed how far back that goes to surprise people. It's a world domination agenda. That's what it is. I'm not the person that's going to stop that, and what's going to stop that is the agenda itself. It runs into a very bad wall.
Okay, then what about Michael Horn, then? Do you experience any kind of problems and issues, being surveilled, and all kind of issues like that?
Well, look, I know that I don't have an expectation of privacy.
Yeah, we had some weird stuff on the phone.
People ask me that. You know what I think happened? I'm not trying to push my luck, even at this age.
Yeah.
I slowly started to do public stuff in about 87, my first presentation. Video, photos. I went to Hawaii. I did presentations for a big Republican business club in L.A., a couple of them, as a matter of fact, the Jonathan Club. And I just kind of under the radar for a while. And then gradually, as I'm starting to get any kind of a presence, we're moving into the 2000s. And fortunately, I consider it, I didn't attract any obvious, to me, attention from the powers that be. I wasn't taken seriously, which is fine with me. And so somehow I got to this point without, having a strange accident, being in good health and all. But there's people that have, threatened my life, clearly.
What about, have you looked back and said, oh boy, that one slipped in, they were definitely an agent, look at them.
What do you mean?
Yeah, like you look back in your life and you say, oh boy, so-and-so, they inserted themselves into my life, and I look at them now, that was so obviously an agent. Why didn't I spot it at the time?
The funny thing is I don't have that. I have people that, came a little forward about, oh, this looks good, I'm skeptical, back and forth. But nobody that tried to ingratiate themselves with me, probably because, people didn't view me as being very important to the thing, and the world doesn't, yes, we've had a few million people in the world find the material through our efforts, and that's great. But everywhere I turn, I am suppressed. I reach out to scientists, to so-called UFO researchers, et cetera, although, yes, I've lectured in universities, I've lectured internationally, but as soon as I try to reach out again, that stuff doesn't go anywhere. And now I have, I put up a thing on the site showing a reel of my presentations, significantly clear enough for anybody who wants to book me, and I'm seeking out that type of representation because this cannot be kept secret from people. If we pay attention to this government dog and pony show and all of the people that represent themselves as experts and eyewitnesses and whistleblowers who know absolutely nothing of significance, no evidence, none.
Yeah, and they also seem to give a lot of prestige to people with a background in intelligence or something like that too. That UFO crowd. But if people want to book you though, they would go to theyflyblog.com and there's an email address they can contact you to book you. Gotcha.
The whole thing right there.
Now, what about free energy? Sure. Does Billy Meier have any information from these aliens? Because obviously they've got great technology that free energy that we could all benefit from here. Is that documented?
Well, here's the thing on that, because as a matter of fact, it's in one of the films, As the Time Fulfills film that I put out in 2012 or whatever. I'd asked him in 2011 when I filmed him about free energy, and he said, well, at this time, that is not a realistic thought. And part of it is, of course, because people who do have alternative energy very often are assassinated. I mean, there's no secret here. This is true. There are efforts to, and they have all the technologies and techniques and terrorists who terrorize people who come forward with things that are highly effective and efficient. He said, however, we could have endless, clean, almost free energy from the clean, deep geothermal that is in operation in a few places only still. The other geothermal, where they inject water to the earth, is very dangerous. That's not what he's talking about. And I had written an article where I think 2014 or so, I said, I wouldn't mind waking up one morning and finding out that there was now Shell Oil was out of business, but there was Shell deep geothermal, good, fine. No more pollution, no more, oil spills, no more trucks and trucking. You're just getting this endless source of heat coming up, powering the turbines, producing the electricity. No more deadly nuclear power plants. Oh my gosh, people have no idea of what's coming with some of these power plants too. Some of the accidents have already been concealed. Some couldn't be concealed. We had 3 Mile Island, but Fukushima, they told Meier within about 5 days the nuclear particles from Fukushima were already detectable over northern Europe. The damage that was already being done to the sea creatures, the mutation. This is about our survival. It's not about chasing lights in the sky, folks. Now, forget UFOs.
We've only got about 10 minutes left. Now, what about pyramids? Does Billy Meier have an explanation for the pyramids and those huge stone movements?
Sure. He said that the actual original pyramids in Egypt and others around the world, some that have been found, some haven't, were actually created almost 73,000 years ago. The Great Pyramid in Egypt was renovated maybe 13,000 years ago by some people at the time. It was used back then, I think is the time it was used to be a warning mechanism about some astronomical phenomenon approaching Earth that was going to be very destructive. They actually used it to put that information into the exterior of the pyramid. It's very interesting information about it. But yes, built into the pyramids are measurements that are very critical to our understanding of, I guess, pi, first of all, and lots of other things. There are people right now, there's a former mathematician for the Pentagon who, along with another guy I know, who a former aerospace engineer, and a guy in Switzerland and others, are working on what they claim is the correct pi. I'm not a physicist, mathematician, so while I've been able to, forward information back and forth, I don't understand other than to know that there's a lot of controversial stuff. We have a danger approaching Earth called asteroid Apophis. Meier was the first person to warn about it in 1981. It's so important that I also commissioned a comic book, and we have about 3 or 4 different Meier things in there focused on the Apophis thing and the BP disaster and all, illustrating the warnings from these people. And NASA, of course, poo-pooed all these warnings, and then they changed their size estimate within 10 meters of what Meier was told. Verifiably, NASA changes their estimates because it's a real threat to Earth, but they don't want to talk about it. This is all, business, not about survival.
Yeah, capitalism. Yeah. Now, what about, you mentioned, what about today, like people like Elon Musk? Are they trying to seek out Meier and have an audience with him and kind of share ideas and stuff?
I wish Elon Musk was more open, but I don't know that he is. I mean, Meier has warned that there's some stuff that Elon Musk is doing that's not going to sit well with people. He wouldn't say more about it. It may or may not be connected. He said this shortly after I think it was just after the launch of the Starlink satellites. Elon Musk, it's almost like you feel sorry with the guy. He's got everything a human being, could attain materially. And yet, here he is flubbing around at times on Twitter trying to, promote himself. He really needs it.
Makes you wonder.
There are brilliant people who have lived, and some who are living currently, some that Meier have met at different times and in our history, and I'll leave it at that for the moment. These people, unless they are seeking truth and all, they, it's just more techno toys and more rockets that go up into the sky, and then it's the 4th of July, and the sparkly stuff there then turns gray at a certain point, inevitably, and comes down to Earth. Meier has said the meaning of life is the evolution of consciousness. Doesn't mean we all become scientists. It means we learn to think and to reason, take responsibility. And then when we're reading this material, we can determine the truth of it for ourselves. I've proved it to a scientific and legal standard. If I say I proved it, I simply pointed out to the fact, here's the book where he says the cause of the contraction of the surface of Mercury is the metal core. The woman is telling him in 1976 or whatever, and NASA thinks they discovered that in 2002 or 2004. I've run this by judges, and I've had attorneys say, "Hey, you've got proof beyond a reasonable doubt here. Why aren't people paying attention to this?" I'm saying because it's true, and instead, people want to be entertained, distracted. They want to be scared, and the real stuff that's occurring is going to be scarier. Right now, we're seeing the first stages of the predicted superstorms, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, fires. Meier's been warning about the American fires since 1980s, I think it is. I mean, people, wake up. Go, I accept all challenges. I'll respond to anything. And, I've defeated the skeptics. I took on big-name professional skeptics, tried to say this is a hoax, and they literally ran away from the conversation and blocked me. They can't answer it. So we've proven that the physical stuff... Look, I was interrogated for 3 months, every Saturday morning by a mysterious guy, mysterious for 3 months, named Joe. Question after question, not very humorous type of fellow, disappears, comes back in August 5 months later, says, "I'm going to tell you who I am, and I'll tell you about your Billy Meier case." Nice back east, kind of a snip to his accent there. He said, "Look, go to your email, check." I'm looking. I said, "What are all these citations?" He says, "I was the top guy, USAF, OSI, Department of Defense, investigator, supervisor, could have cared less about UFOs, tasked with protecting the security of the country. Have you seen those citations and all that?" "Yeah." "Delete them. Now I'm going to tell you about your Billy Meier case after all the questions. It's 100% ironclad, authentic. I'll take on any skeptics on your behalf." And he did. And the article he wrote is on my blog for free. U.S. astronaut, the late Gordon Cooper, is on record on a video. Billy Meier, the man in Switzerland, it's real. He's meeting with these people. He's meeting with extraterrestrials. Why do people think it's a hoax? Says astronaut Gordon Cooper. Do you think our government wants people to know that? They want to peddle all this hysteria instead.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was a little surprised to see that video because I had never heard of that before. Like Gordon Cooper's very well known. You'd think this would have made a splash, Now, real quick, too, there was just some recent congressional hearings, right? And it's funny because, like, all this time, all the conspiracy theorists, who that I love, have been saying UFOs are real. It's a conspiracy, right? But then now that the government comes out and says they're real, they say, no, they're not. You know what I mean? Yeah. You can't win.
Well, you can't because the government's agenda is disinformation, power, military, war, weapons, as we alluded to before. The UFO people want to be important, but we've got a professor at Harvard who publishes books and thinks he's discovered extraterrestrial evidence. He's clueless. He knows nothing, and I've sent him the information. Maybe I'll talk to him again if he ever wants to. But these people want to be famous. They want to sell books. They want to be important. And that's a betrayal of our duty to humankind. This is a situation that is more dangerous because there are some other folks here, and they are also based underground. And Meier we have a video about it from 8 years ago talking about them. And these people now... Our government is firing on their craft when they're seen, and in the prophecies from 1987, it warns about the descendants of an extraterrestrial race that are going to join forces with those who oppose the West when the West, a.k.a. the U.S. and allies, try to launch a worldwide war to dominate Russia, etc. People, this is not what you're being told.
How did you find me?
I was in the internet the other day. I'm trying to remember exactly how I saw you online. I was looking up for investigative shows or something. I'm trying to remember. I do this kind of thing because I send my stuff out. They don't want to hear about it because they want to keep talking to the know-nothings. And you had a background in criminal investigation. And looking, wait a minute, this guy. And I listened to a snippet. I'm trying to remember what it was. And I saw, I got to contact this guy.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna waste another minute. And I sent you that email. And lo and behold, in no time, You got that? And what the heck?
You know what? I've never done a UFO show before. I've never had an interest in any.
Really?
I talked about those 7-foot-tall aliens in Peru, a little tongue-in-cheek,
Yeah.
because what Billy says they're not miners, right? These weren't miners trying to spook the locals. Yeah.
He published the information. It's on our website in 1976, warning about the 7-foot-tall Peruvian giants who would reappear, and there would be attacks, and there's going to be other stuff coming from them. And in the same context, he mentioned a specific thing happened in Udine in Italy, an earthquake, and that had occurred within days of the giant sightings. And then he talked about volcanic eruptions coming and American islands and blazes. Maui was ablaze after that. Look, people, can they make it any simpler? It's no, we want to chase license guys. Look, I've approached Joe Rogan. Friends of mine put Meier's photo book in his hand, 617 irreproducible pre-digital photos. And Dan Aykroyd is talking to him. He mentions Meier and Rogan, who's, I think, smoked too much something or other, picks up the book and says, oh, Photoshop, 1975, Photoshop? This guy has had every phony in ufology on his show. Not one piece of evidence. He's holding the only real evidence in abundance, and he can't recognize it. There's another guy, Lex Fridman, an intellectual, who has on all the credentialed experts, none of whom know anything. I've sent him they won't talk about it. So, okay, what are you going to do? I like taking walks in the forest and going to lakes and streams and oceans and being happy in nature. If people are going to shut this down, it's only going to just make things worse for us here.
Yeah, which is probably, there's no doubt that things are getting worse. But Michael Horn, we are out of time. The website is called theyflyblog.com. Michael Horn runs that website. There's a couple of books that he wants to direct your attention to. Is The Might of the Thought, and the other one is From the Depth of Outer Space. Okay, my own handwriting, I can't read like an old man over here, but this time I got it. So check that stuff out, man. Very interesting stuff. Michael, I'd like to have you come back, too, sometime. We got to delve into this a little bit more. Great stuff here.
Love to. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much. Good night.